Welcome back to Gale Force Wins Season 3.
The Gale Force Wins podcast is proudly sponsored by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association. The NLCA provides unparalleled opportunities for its members through industry education, construction information, government advocacy, and networking events. The NLCA is building Newfoundland and Labrador. For more information, visit nlca.ca.
Welcome to another edition of Gale Force Wins. I want to tell you what a pleasure it is. Gale Force Wins, we have a lot of conversations with people that are doing interesting things, and sometimes the people that come on the show have intersected our lives at different points. We've never met. We just met not an hour ago, and I instantly liked you.
Thanks,
you were talking my language, but you and Jerry got a long history for sure.
Yeah.
So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, as a mentioned friend of Jerry Cruz, my name's Alex Liot. Most recently founder of BIBLIOnomics, which is an obscure startup, culture tech, marketing tech. We've built some proprietary approaches around capturing location-based information in Canadian books and using them to promote Canadian books, and recently using Canadian books to help promote other things. So, but it's a long history, Jerry, and I go back to the newspaper days, slinging ads 20 years ago, different newspaper companies, but always on this digital side of things. And I'd say in a lot of ways it still harkens back to this kind of crossover belief in local, but the opportunity to digitize local and still do meaningful things with it. So yeah, it's good to reconnect.
There's an important question that I have to ask, and it's always about that transition. So you and I do go way back. What we did digitally was really interesting. The fact that you've left a paycheck, Alex. Let's talk a little bit about that.
You're talking to my wife?
No, I've done the same thing.
Yep.
Alan has done the same thing. Tell us a little bit about that transition. And don't tell us, I made a decision one day and went to the next, because I know that's not the way it goes.
No. I mean, it's funny. I don't know if I ever told you. I actually took entrepreneurship at Dalhousie 25 years ago.
Yeah, I think you might have mentioned it.
And fell in and had a job. And I think with the way we had fun, we were entrepreneurs, right? Like it was this big corporate behemoth and very historically sort of structured ones at that. And we talked about it over lunch, actually, right? Like you had to be punchy. You had to kind of take on your own people a little bit to fight from within to sort of build those things. So that wasn't necessarily new, but yeah, stability of a check and medical benefits, and that is a trippy thing to get around. So after I left the newspaper business, I spent 3 years as the chief marketing officer and then CEO for Atlantic Publishers Marketing Association. It was always a term gig, and actually this was kind of a nice thing. It's nice to be employed with an end date. It was a 3-year job, but it kind of gave me this opportunity to look at that and evaluate that possible end date. And in this case, BIBLIOnomics is an obscure niche solution, but I saw the problem intimately over those 3 years and was really able to, a lot of this is just continued thinking from that time. So I was able to see that path. And for the first time, I guess I saw a path that maybe could actually put food on my table reliably over a period of time, and not just be a bit of a business whim and idea. So it's been trippy. I tell you what's the most wonderful thing is the detachment from the problem and the objective and the earning. And it's taken a while to get there, but at the point I just sort of resigned to, okay, what I'm really doing through this phase, 6 months, is deeply and intimately understanding the customer and their specific problem and their current approach to the problem, and then building the exact thing that I think would ultimately answer it without actually having to worry about selling it. Was wonderful.
Yeah.
And it's
that's coming from a guy who built his career in sales.
Yeah, I also claim $100 million of advertising activity. So yeah, it was really trippy, but it was the opportunity for the first time to actually build the thing that ultimately I'll be selling. And much like you guys are doing, when you do that, you need to know it works. You need to know it has the substance to be saleable, right? Because you're the one standing in front of that at a certain point. So, to take that time to build the thing that I knew ultimately I would have complete confidence in, because respectfully, maybe we didn't always believe in absolutely everything we sold every
No.
customer, right?
That to speak for yourself.
Yeah, sorry, I work not in Newfoundland. You guys, Telegram was killer paper in Newfoundland. That was a hell of a thing to sell.
Yeah.
But you know, to know that it's going to be my name, my face on it, representing it, making those commitments, and then to give myself the time, and you know, Canada's a great country to support startups. There's a lot of, you know, I have a residency, and there's little bits of ways that we're able to buy that time, but that's been immensely gratifying, you know, is to just build the solution and now see if it generates the result, which will be that long-term system, back to the stability of some income and medical benefits.
We get that, don't we, Alan?
No, 100%. You know, one thing I picked up on there and I find fascinating, and I don't think a lot of people spend time doing it. A few years ago, I had the pleasure of visiting an engineering school just outside of Boston, and they were doing a student design project. They were solving a problem for a real client. They spent 6 months before they started designing the solution, understanding the client. And it was just earth-shattering in the engineering community that they're going to do this, that they're going to spend so much time. And I remember walking into their think space, into their ideation rooms, and they were just pictures of the client everywhere.
Good.
Pictures of the client. Above all of their workspaces were pictures of the client. Tell me about the importance of understanding the client.
So I'll tell you what's interesting. Again, I got no business in startups. I have no business in newspaper, no business in books, and no business in startups because I don't know tech. But what's interesting about the existing paradigm in startups, and literally till a year and a half ago, is you could get $1 million in seed funding with a good idea and a really fancy, you know, model, fill in these 9 things and come to this conclusion, and some VC stamps that, and off you go. And it really has been the model up until the collapse of the venture capital funding about a year and a half ago. And this is just when I launched my startup. So I'm like walking out and everybody's like, bad timing, like, you know, this is not good. There's no money. But I ended up following the model that was inherent to me anyway, which is I'm a salesman.
Yeah.
I went and sold a solution. I knew there was a problem. I went and sold a solution, and I built the solution, sort of reverse engineered into that. And as a function, we've been revenue positive since month 3. So, you know, we're a startup that doesn't lose money. I don't get paid well, but like, you know, we're getting there,
Right.
Jerry's point. But, you know, we became customer-centric first. And so as we build iterations of the technology, each one was incredibly bespoke to that problem set, right? And I have a great partner, Sandy. He worked for Yahoo in the Valley back in the, you know, early 90s. He has a total different mindset than me. And he is very much this sort of rigorous measure, repeat, da-da-da-da. And I'm like, let's just go make the promise to the customer and take the check and figure it out. You know, and we have this great balance in the middle. But where it really crosses over well is I know the things that are going to make that person on the other side of the table feel like what we're doing is magic. And it's the difference in how many times you sit around and you're trying to set, like, will something on somebody? No, but provide them a solution to their genuine problem, or, you know, to tap into a genuine opportunity. That's the magic. But they're smart, and they'll sniff out your bullshit. Or, you know, I don't know if you swear on this podcast, but, you know, that they will get you. And that was my big problem. You know, the selling, and the, like, here's what we believe is the business with the thing that we want you to buy, telling you what you believe. It rarely works. You know, it was like bully sales tactics versus break down your day. You know, tell me about the thing. And rarely do they actually understand or can articulate their specific problem. Right? We had a good chat over lunch. I won't get into detail, but like you described for me a situation or a desire, not a problem. There are some very specific problems in that opportunity, but let's go back to what's the outcome you're looking to achieve. Okay, and let's forget about the stuff in the middle for a while. That's the work to be done, right? And let's really make sure we understand this and this, you know, the start and the finish. And if you do, selling them on the journey is really easy, right? Because you're already bought into this thing, and it's not my job to scrutinize whether your solution is going to deliver me to my end goal, because we've agreed on the end goal.
Right.
Now we're figuring out the journey, and I think that's the thing that I find so empowering and so wonderful about customer-centric design modeling is like, look, you're going to love me all day if I fix your problem, and if I can fix your problem and their problem at the same time, well, you're both going to love me, and then the selling is just, it doesn't have to exist even, you know, it just, it happens. So
But Alex, there's challenges, and then there's the book industry. Let's be honest.
Sure.
You've taken on the book industry.
Oh,
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's. Do you know? I'm reading a great book right now. David Sachs, journalist out of Toronto. He wrote The Revenge of Analog. 2015, 2016 really changed my world. You know, like, why do people still use notebooks when we have all these things? Why do people like records when we have MP3 players? You know, and it's the meaning for them, the connection of those things, those analog, the imperfect nature of things that we like as humans. And I've always been bullish. I didn't believe everything we sold, but I've always said, look, if people are going to pay $3.25 for 32 sheets of paper that cost about 18 cents to print, you know, like, there's something here. Like, they have this connection. And you talk to people, you know, that newspaper experience, it's not the utilitarian deliver of news content.
No.
That is not the value proposition. And anybody who still thinks it is out of business or going there quickly, right? It is the experiential exchange of that, of the sitting, of the coffee, of the chatting with your partner, of the folding it a certain way and doing the crossword. And what we've seen, or what I've seen, you know, in my time in books, is they have the exact same staying power. They are somehow, you know, despite the tsunami of digital innovation, resisting. And you look at the long-term trends of book consumption types, digital is strong, but it's about a third, and it's been a third for about 10 years. It's a utilitarian vehicle. It's because I'm in my car and reading a book's not super practical. Right. You know, I'm traveling, and very few people prefer it as a medium. Off the charts are the preferences for the physical thing. So, you know, I think if you kind of believe in that baseline understanding, I'm into the product, and I don't even read a lot myself, it's the funny thing, but I think I love gifting books. I think people who gift them, who read them, for them it's incredibly meaningful. But the challenge, the opportunity I saw is everything related to trying to tap into especially Canadian books, which are a small share, is well-intentioned manual work done by well-intentioned people. And there's no systematization or digitization or amplification of the things that make those books incredibly unique and relatable to different people, consumers in different situations. Location's kind of our thing. So we're applying a technology layer to take that old world product and see if we can, you know, create a whole new way to present it to customers. And then, as we chat a little bit, this sort of idea of we can take these cultural assets and deploy them across enterprise channels. I wonder, we're at DevTech, I wonder if there's a supply company that would like to give military historical books about Atlantic Canada as a meaningful gift and engagement, right? But we need to be able to catalog and categorize those, and that's the systems we're building. So, you know, I love this idea of taking the old meaningful thing that has staying power and shining it up and perhaps rethinking about what it can be for us, how we can use it, how it can promote itself. So, yeah, same thesis, just, you know, sucker for punishment. Sure.
Well, go ahead, Al.
Can I pick up on something else that you said there? You talked about having a business partner and that you don't always see kind of, you don't see things the same way.
Sure.
Tell me the importance of the business to you in a partnership. You know, the old saying, you know, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. All of those those terms come to mind, or those thoughts come to mind. But tell me about the importance of doing something with a partner like this, and the importance of not always kind of being on the same page, and so you don't get into that kind of groupthink.
I mean, my first piece of advice is structure it well. I still own the vast majority of it. So at the end of the day, right, we're doing it the way I want to do it.
Right.
And I should clarify, I actually have two, I'll call them partners. They're technically strategic advisors.
Right.
Sandy's on the digital space, and then I have a lady who's been in the publishing space, and I joke she's the Wayne Gretzky of the publishing space when he was leaving Edmonton, right, and brought hockey to the U.S. She is into what we're doing. And I will say, Sandy and I started very deliberately, actually, from this space of being friends and acquaintances first and chatting it out. And we joke BIBLIOnomics is a human-centric startup.
Yeah.
On his LinkedIn, so despite, you know, Yahoo, 10 startups, 10 years in AI, his LinkedIn profile says primary parent. And that's his number one job, is being a dad. And you know, boy, this is, you know, being that primary parent is my number one job. So our overlying to that whole relationship is human-centric startup first. So when I say we disagree, it's very polite. Right. It's obscenely polite and gentle and guiding. And he has this experience in startups and tech. but I believe, and he has total faith in my sort of industry knowledge and sort of experience, and like I'm happy to be the loudmouth, obviously, out in front of this thing. So we have a really great dynamic, and I rely on his coaching and guidance. And I would say the learning for me is figuring out how to just accept where I'm weak and put it and phrase it as a question.
Right.
That's
interesting. Another thing I want to pick up on, John, he keeps giving great ideas here. You talk about, here we are at DefSec, so we're at a big defense trade show, and you came down here to be a part of it, but you brought up a really cool idea, and that is gifting a book to people in a show like this. In a trade show like this, a lot of time, if you're a good client, you get a pen.
Yep.
If you're walking by, you get the little stress squeeze ball, right?
Yep.
If you're a really good client, they reach under the table and they give you a box set of something. And book is a great idea, but more specifically, a book that speaks to that person. How do you target a book into somebody like that to an event like this?
It's a fantastic question. Every year in Canada, Canadian books, 1,500 new books every year, broken up over 2 seasons. You can go back 10 years. So there's 15,000 Canadian books of every stripe and iteration, potentially sitting on a shelf you could use. And it's instantly that thing that becomes, I think in a lot of cases, the inhibitor to that type of activity happening, because it's one book for everybody. Well, what book? We can't offend everybody. It's got to be generic. Everybody's got to want it, and you end up with vanilla, right? Like it's. And I always love, we used to read a lot of Seth Godin in the back of the day, and The Purple Cow, and how many people run home and look at my branded pen, honey, short of it being a very expensive pen. So what do you do that's more meaningful and create that engagement? So what I love about books is those 1,500 books are all completely unique content marketing assets, in my mind. Now we can dismiss a whole bunch of them because they're not relevant, but with more and more tools, and this is what doesn't exist super robustly now, is the ability to click a few buttons and say, okay, show me military history, Atlantic Canada, Canadian authored. There are some mechanisms, there's not a lot. And you want to go a layer deeper, just had a guest who suffers from a disability. Well, those can become layers which start to add value to that product as a gifting exchange. So that's sort of like building the inherent, okay, we pick books that are really meaningful. But then I think having mechanisms that allows you to actually curate the specific deliverable is what really kind of sets it on edge. And for the last 3 years, every time I meet somebody, I bring them a local book. And I try and use my mental understanding of them and that book to try and pick something good. Kind of doesn't even matter if it's off base or it's wrong. But if I'm getting closer to that, you gave me something that was meaningful to me, it really works. I can share a practical business example. I had I won't share his name, but high up, big company, runs a 100-person team, sector worth billions globally. Basically, his job is, keep the culture lively, right? Make everybody be happy to be there, keep the $100,000 or $200,000 engineers happy. So he prides himself on that cultural thing. It happens to be in the sports world, where this is, and we met for lunch a few months ago, and I gave him a book, and it was a book about an NBA player from Newfoundland, actually, Carl English.
Oh, yeah.
All right? And he jokes, he's like, I took that book to work, and that thing has been doing the rounds, and it's dog-eared now, and he's like, it's funny, not all the Newfoundland sports enthusiasts knew about him, not all the basketball people, but they're all super proud. Yeah. And I was like, can we just break down the value for you as a CEO of bringing that book in and putting it on the lunch table? How many people engage with it? It's like at least 20. What's your retention rate? And we started working it back where that $29 book, because and it's the fact it's so obscure and not an obvious thing, in that room with Newfoundlanders working in tech, working in sports, it created a value exponential to its cover price, right? And it's how do we get to that magic in a systematic way is kind of the mission I'm on right now.
And it says a lot about the person that gifts it too. So the thought process that you put into selecting a book for Jerry that we had lunch here today, that you went that one extra step and said, I'm going to go have lunch with Jerry today, and what would intrigue Jerry? I mean, that's a meaningful thing to do for. Not very often people do that anymore. It reminds me of comedians in cars getting coffee, where Jerry Seinfeld goes out and gets his buddies and he takes it for a ride. And he spends a lot of time picking out the car that he wants to go pick this person up in. Yep. And the car has to speak to that person, and it's obscure in some cases, but it's not so much the car, it's not about that. It's about that Jerry Seinfeld took time to really think about this engagement he's going to have with this person, that person must be important to him. Just like Jerry is important to you.
You nailed it, right? And it's giving a mechanism that allows the entity to display that type of thoughtfulness in a variety of ways. And you don't often need, like, again, we've done this other example where we helped an entity curate a collection of 20 books and then create a digital access where you said, go and pick whichever one of these is meaningful for you. But those 20 had that meaning and purpose, and then it was the gifting that was really thoughtful on the tail end. So, yeah, I'm really fascinated by that mechanism, which if you're trying to replicate that meaningfulness just with money, you know, it's kind of it's an arms race, pardon the pun. Right? It's like, how much can you spend on the next biggest thing versus taking this other approach, which is almost deliberately displaying your ability to spend less numerically, but drive far more value in the thoughtfulness, which, you know, what's the business value of that?
Yeah, and it's healthy, man. That's a healthy approach to life, right? To spend time thinking about an interaction as opposed to just having a transaction.
Right.
You know what I mean? Today, I go back to the lunch we had together, the three of us. I mean, it could have been a transaction about, what are you up to? What are you up to? It was more than that.
Yeah.
It was a little bit more intimate than that. And the book was kind of in the middle of it all that allowed that to happen, which I thought was just fascinating.
I'll draw the parallel to what you guys are doing here, right? It's I'm sure every single, the structure of this conversation is consistent. The content of this conversation is completely unique. And the real value of this 40 minutes of me babbling or half an hour is, as you said, probably 10 wind gusts?
Wind gusts.
Wind gusts.
Or moments.
Little moments, right? And you know, then the ability to pull that out. But for our collective business promotion, if we can find a wind gust that, you know, suits my purpose and suits your purpose, what's the potential value of that? The fact that, you know, this is a construct is not ridiculously expensive has no bearing on that. And that to me is, you know, we're back to, I can be more thoughtful, be more genuine, be more authentic, be more creative, and that can outpower your dollars. To me, is a super fun way to, you know, empower small business again.
Oh boy, is it ever. Over the horizon, what are you looking at? What's next? What's keeping you excited, keeping you up?
A lot's keeping me up. I you know, a lot of time in our world, land Canada, tourism, you know, and I've spoken a little bit about how I find this paradigm between tourism's problem, especially, you know, here in Nova Scotia 10 years ago, it was a one-season pony, right? It's a, you know, come for the summer. Not a lot of people wanted to come here in February. Well, really, books has a very similar problem. 60% of books are purchased in Q4. It's a gift paradigm. Getting more people into bookstores and buying books in different ways for different purposes, Q1, 2, 3, you know, I think is a big part of, you know, our mission is to reverse the decline of Canadian authored book sales, which is about 12% right now. We're not going to do that just selling more books at holiday. So how do we sell across those other quarters? So interesting things around book awards, but the one I'm really enjoying right now is bibliotourism, and this idea that somebody's travel to a location, much like books, you know, taps on the same locations, the same, you know, maybe restaurants, the same attractions, but their curation of those things, their experience of those things is a completely personal, unique, authentic thing. And can we use books to help bring people here, but then also maybe help them experience places in a different way? And part of that pivot is the book reading propensity, so tapping into that, you know, 18% of U.S. adults that are high income, you know, that's what they love first. We're going to help them discover that they love this region through books and stuff like that. So, yeah, I like this sort of these double-ended solutions, right? Two big cultural problems, one solution, swing it.
Bibliotourism. Is that your term, or is that a widely used industry term?
I did Google it. It doesn't seem to exist. I'm claiming it so far. So
because it's a brilliant term.
Thank you.
Let me add something. He's coined another term, and I'm going to bring it up right now, and I use it a lot. Someone told me, oh, I got a promotion the other day, and I said, I'm going to quote my friend Alex Liot, condoliations. Congratulations and condolences for getting a promotion.
Yeah.
Or leaving your job, you know, family coming. Technically called a portmanteaus. I found out from the book world, but aggregated words together.
Is that right?
Yeah,
a portmanteaus.
A portmanteau. Yeah, French word. The merger of two independent words. Yeah, that's one. And BIBLIOnomics, obviously, same kettle of fish.
Alex, I'll tell you something. When Alan and I, were talking about you today, and I was telling them about you, I will say this publicly: you motivated me a lot in the industry. You're one of the smartest guys I had ever worked with, next to our good friend Don Spurl, who unfortunately passed away.
Yeah, totally.
But you always motivated me because you were just always thinking, forward thinking, and in the roles you and I had, we had to be forward thinking. But I love what you're doing. I'll say this, that you're motivating me. Just being in your company has been exciting. I just can't get over what it is you're doing. You're bringing technology into the industry, a really important industry. I will say this, books, Al, have absolutely changed my life. There's 5 books in particular, I won't name them all, but they changed my life.
Yeah.
Books changed my life. So it's really important what you're doing.
I think it's they're a great vehicle, right? And for so many things, and it's just about thinking what they could be to us, how we promote them, how we use them a little differently. Because I don't get a lot of evidence. Nobody's like, books are stupid, It's not that. Books are old, books are antiquated, aren't they getting beaten up? You get a lot of that.
Yeah.
But the love is there inherently, and that's a nice place to trade, right? You start with that and like, hey, and I put them in this what if. Oh, another chat, Biblio Health, another whole play, but there's a research, sorry, I'm pitching it, but there's a research study happening right now at the QE2 in the cardiology department, 2,500 patients, and they're going to measure can having access to a collection of local digital accessible books decrease the rate of negative outcomes, which is significant. So they're looking at, but it's again this idea that if you can tap into books and their ability to deliver other utility across other sectors, where do we go?
Yeah.
It could get really interesting.
Well, you're in your infancy. We hope to have you back on this podcast when there's some more things on the go. Alan, I tell you, he wouldn't disappoint.
No, it's fascinating. I guess the one thing that I don't understand, I can't get my head around, is you're both very entrepreneurial people. Jerry and I obviously were on this entrepreneurial journey together, and you could tell instantly when you talk to you that entrepreneurial fire is burning within you. How did you guys survive in the confines of what could be argued as being like one of the most restrictive spaces the newspaper world?
Can I answer that first, Alex? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Despite the fact you're the guest.
No,
I've been asked that by a lot of other entrepreneurial people. Alan, I'll tell you this. In the newspaper business, I believe, and I still believe, we really contributed to the democratic fabric of our community. Those stories that Alex is talking about that are now in book form, the newspaper was such an important aspect of the democratic fabric, frankly. That's what motivated me. And you could be entrepreneurial within it. I think entrepreneur, I think you called it, right? Anyway, I stole the guest's thunder there, but that was my reason for staying around.
I mean, there is no doubt. It's like books. There's no doubt it was such an important thing, and people would crap on newspaper more than books. Like people love to hate it, and generally they're the people that didn't read it or consume it that would love to crank on it. But there was that. I'll be a little more crass. I was a sucker for a good problem.
Yeah.
And that was like another one of the best year in newspaper history was 2004. It was the same year I started. You were there a little bit longer than me, right? And but that was the best year. So I rode that train all the way downhill. And what it was, though, was this intersection of like, there is value here. And almost what I enjoyed more, and this was kind of like, was being the contrarian of when people were dismissing it harder, I kind of liked it more. Right. And I'll tell you, recently I've been buying a lot of media, a lot of newspaper as well, because I think it's exceptionally well priced if you can negotiate it well, and structure it in a way that it's actually useful to you, right? My ability to buy community newspaper across the country and differentiate the creative so it's a local book with a local relevance in every one of those is really good, as long as I don't pay the price that they're asking for off the shelf. Restructure it and buy in. But it can generate results, and again, thousands of people don't consume something every day. You don't get that much attention without having the opportunity to convert.
Right.
For me, and it still is, the approach to trying to convert it is flawed. The idea of a full page, hey, get your coat on, walk out the door, go buy that car now, or like, love this business, didn't know the business, now love the brand of the business because they bought an ad. That's where it's broken. And it was this classic innovator's dilemma of like, the ways they needed to change were going to feel really uncomfortable.
Right.
We talked about that. I heard you guys talking about that. Being willing to be that uncomfortable and knowing that that is the mechanism that's going to see you around the curve, that for me was pretty infatuating. And yeah, riding the curve downhill and just trying to fix that problem. I joked with somebody the other day, I'm not done with the newspaper business.
No.
I just need them to be even more, desperate.
You sound like Warren Buffett. When you have as much money as him and you want to reinvent, newspapers. But you know what, Alan? I think Alex should come back on, and I would really like to explore your marketing expertise. We've developed quite an array of tools for our podcast. But I think what you've said there, despite the fact newspapers tend to be broken, the marketing industry is challenged. There's things like they're chasing clicks still. Remember years ago when you and I started? I want to get 20,000 clicks on this. Well, really? How many people do you want to... I always say to Alan, get the cash register to ring.
Yeah.
So maybe that would be the title. Here's how you get the cash register to ring,
It's all changing. What I was saying, what you guys are doing, what I think I'm doing is what the sector does know they need and they're starved for is quality content. They need quality, I'll say quality content and actionable quality content, right? And I think there's great opportunity to build models that deliver that into the supply chain, because that mechanism is not there yet.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to talk about it. It's how all of this attention converts, right? Ultimately.
Yeah. Well, we'll have him back for another episode.
Well, let's make a date to circle back in 6 months and get a bit of an
let's do
update
it.
there. I mean, your vision is incredible. Your articulation of the problem space and stuff like that is impressive. There's no doubt about it. I wish you much success.
Thanks
for joining us.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Jerry, always
Absolute pleasure to be in your company again, Alex. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for tuning in to Gale Force Wins. That's Gale Force Wins, WINS.com.